Several years ago, there was a popular series of books that they also turned into posters, and it seemed like everywhere I went, I would see one of these Magic Eye posters in a waiting room at the doctor's office or maybe at an office building. But at first, they just looked like a random pattern of colors or sometimes shapes. The longer you looked at it, though, you realized that there was a trick to looking at them. If you looked at them just right, you would begin to see a hidden 3D image that had been buried in the picture. Just like changing the way that you looked at a Magic Eye picture could result in you seeing something that you had never seen before, I want to challenge your point of view on money. Like me, I'm sure that you've heard people say things before like, if I only had a little bit more money, or if I could just get that raise at work, then things would be different. At a fundamental level, what we're saying when we say something like that is that we understand that money is something that can help us solve a problem that we have. But if we're not careful, we can let that money as a problem solver thought process become so ingrained that we stop seeing solutions to problems and start thinking that what we really need is more money in order to solve our problems. We start to equate having more money with having less problems. But that kind of thinking actually puts the cart before the horse. So here's where I want to start to challenge your perspective on money. When you think about money, I want you to stop thinking about money as an end or a goal and start thinking about money as a tool. Now, what do we know about tools? Tools are objects or implements that help us to solve a problem. Have you heard the old saying that when you have a problem and all you have is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail? That illustrates the fact that sometimes we can get tunnel vision. We think that money is the tool that is best suited to solve all of our problems, and that reinforces itself so that every time a new problem comes up, we immediately assume that we need to find a way to get more money to solve that problem, instead of looking at the problem the way it is and deciding what actually is the best resource that I have to solve that problem or to achieve that life goal. Rather than thinking that money is something that will help us to solve our problems, what we should do is operate a little bit more like a construction foreman. When they show up on a job site, they're not thinking about what tools they currently have and what they can do with them. What they do is they show up, they take a look at the construction plans, they look at the timeline that they've been given, and they decide what it is they should accomplish that day, and then they select the tools that they'll need to get that work accomplished. Thinking about your problems from a desired end result or goal will accomplish a few things. First of all, it will help you stay focused on what it is that you're trying to do. If instead of looking at our life, identifying a problem, and then assuming that money is the best tool to solve that problem, if we stay focused on the problem that we're actually trying to solve, it will make sure that the things that we do move us closer to the goal of solving that problem. Second, it will help minimize inefficiency and waste, because you'll understand that things that happen along the way to solving a problem are not necessarily things that are going to move you closer to the solution. You can begin to set those things aside or reorder your priorities in order to focus on the things that help you solve the problem. If you take this approach and start to think about your life goals, maybe that's advancing in your career, maybe it's spending more time with family, maybe it's freeing up time so that you can take care of a loved one. When you look at your goal and the purpose that you're driving towards, you can start to assess whether or not money is actually the right tool to help you achieve that purpose or that goal. In this way, you can ensure that money starts to serve you instead of money becoming your taskmaster. Next, let's think about what money actually is. Way back in 1776, there was a man named Adam Smith who wrote a very important book that we refer to now as The Wealth of Nations. In the book, he used the phrase acquired and useful abilities when trying to describe ways that individuals create things of value. Now let's connect that concept to our philosophy on money. The only resource that you actually own is your time and ability. You are either actively trading your time for something of value, or you're trading your time in order to improve an ability that you can then use to trade for something of value. Money, or dollars and cents, is really just a way for us to store that value that we've created and use it at a later time. Money is a transactional medium, And if we stop viewing it as an end goal and start viewing it as a tool that we can use to store value that we can then exchange later for something that's important to us or that we want to accomplish, we're taking the first step towards understanding how we can use money properly. Once you start to apply this principle to earning money, having money, using money, looking at your life's priorities, you'll start to understand that there are times where money is not the best tool to achieve a goal or objective that you have for your life. Sometimes you'll find that the resource that you need is something you already have. That's why a budget is so useful, because it's a tool that can force us to recognize when we are using resources that we have, but applying them towards something that isn't a priority for us. And vice versa, we can confirm when we are using the resources that we have, whether that's time or money or abilities, and we're actually putting them towards things that we want to achieve with our life, or the priorities or things that are important to us. This can be a transformative step in your process of learning how to manage your own personal finances. You can start to identify areas where you need to reallocate or reuse resources that you already have, but can put them towards achieving the objectives you're actually interested in achieving. Here's an exercise I'd like you to try to complete. Go ahead and write down some of the top priorities that you have for your life. I'm not talking about small day-to-day items, but the big items. They may be things like career advancement, spending more time with family, becoming a better spouse. List those items and try to rank them in order of priority to you. Lastly, next to each of these priorities, write down what tool or resource it is you feel like you need in order to accomplish that priority. Now be careful, because our tendency is going to be to write down money next to almost all of them. But as we've discussed in the video, if you consider the fact that money is really just a tool, and it's really a temporary tool designed to store value that you create through your time or ability, you can start to see that maybe the resource you need isn't actually money. It may be acquiring a new ability. It may actually be finding a way to reallocate resources that you already have, or make sure that you're shifting your time and applying that time towards some of these priorities in a way that makes sense and helps you achieve them. Let me give you a personal example. Some time ago, my wife and I sat down and started to look at our budget, and we tried to talk about what our goals were for our family and for each other. One of the things that we identified was wanting to someday own our own house. As we started to look at our budget and the current resources that we had, we realized that in order to achieve the goal of getting a house, we were probably going to have to give up some of the things that we were currently spending our money on. As we started to take a look at those things that we thought we would have to give up, we started to realize that most of those things were supporting one of our other family priorities, which was spending time together, doing things that were meaningful, and creating lasting bonds and relationships between ourselves. So when we started to compare our goal of wanting to have a house with our goal of wanting to make sure that our family felt loved, appreciated, supported, and that we were spending enough time with each other, we realized that we actually had to make a decision between these two items. We decided to put our family first and put our resources and funds and money and time and effort towards creating experiences that allowed us to spend time together as a family, because those things ended up being more important to us than physically owning our own home. Maybe even now as you're watching this video, you're starting to realize that there are some areas where you need to reallocate the resources you have. And that may be time, it may be money, it may be your abilities. And maybe you need to take them away from the priorities you're currently putting them towards and put them towards priorities that are actually more important to you. Just like the magic eye pictures that we talked about at the beginning of the video, I want you to leave watching this video having a renewed perspective on how you view money in your personal finances. I want you to understand that money should never be an end or a goal by itself, because it is simply a way to temporarily store value that you've created by trading your time or your abilities. If you've already realized this concept and have seen how it's changed parts of your life for the better, go ahead and leave me a comment. Describe it for myself and for others who may watch the video so that they can benefit from your experience. As always, like, subscribe, comment, and if you know somebody who could benefit from the content of this video, please share it with them.